Hello, this is Alex Birkett, and you're listening to the Long Game Podcast. In this conversation, I'm chatting with Aashish Krishna Kumar. Aashish is currently the director of go-to-market at Zuora. He is a self-taught marketer and a lawyer by education who has not practiced a day in his life. He took the entrepreneurial plunge right away, right after law school, and built one of India's first SaaS-based solutions for litigating lawyers and law firms to manage their practice in India. He also built a location-based search engine to find verified lawyers in your city in India. And after multiple stints, growth and marketing-related functions in various companies in the B2B domain, he joined Togai as one of the first non-tech hires, and Togai eventually got acquired by Zuora. So there he did all kinds of go-to-market activities that ranged from identification of ICP, messaging, positioning, website, SEO, performance marketing, events, and marketing tech stack. So in this conversation, we really dive deeply into two areas. First, pricing, and in particular, why pricing obsession early on for an early stage company is a little bit overrated. So thinking through optimizations and experiments and tactics, it's not the first priority. And actually, the first priority for an early stage startup is survival. That's the foremost thing you should be focusing on. And then second, more in detail, we actually cover Aashish's optimistic take on SEO, particularly why he believes now is the best time ever to be competing in organic and with content. So we cover market and platform dynamics that have shifted, consumer journey changes, essentially have caused mediocre SEO tactics that have worked over the past 10 years or so, and gamification plays to be less effective. And in that place, basically taking true value additive practices like narrowly focused, expert-driven topic ideation and content creation, exceptional quality in all things, indexing on trust signals and kind of who is speaking the message, and then multimedia and multi-platform strategy and why these things will rule the day. So basically value additive, first principles, all of that stuff is critical. And now it's working really well in SEO. And that's why we're excited. So without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Aashish. Tell me about the lawyer thing. So you trained and went to school to be a lawyer and then decided not to actually pursue that as a career?
Let me put it this way, right? So my journey of what I wanted to do in life actually started like when I was a child. Growing up in India, I watched my dad start a small business built out of a really small investment of $200, $300. And then I've seen him slowly, steadily, and profitably grow that business to a really successful business, right? So just seeing him climb that ladder step by step, and that's what really planted the seed in me of like wanting to start something. So right out of school, I didn't know what to do, right? I was confused, right? So I thought I'll choose law, thinking it was a professional degree to have. I'll keep my options open, and I just ended up doing law. And right after doing law, again, the question was, what do I do? So I married my interests with my legal background that I have, and I started a company of my own. I had a small startup, right? When we built AWO for lawyers in India. So basically, we had two products. One was a location-based search engine to find legal professionals in India, right? And the other was a SaaS-based solution where lawyers and law firms in India can manage their entire practice. And then we reached a pivotal point where we had to raise funds to keep the lights on. And that's when I took a decision where the market, I wasn't really seeing product market fit in the market. Like lawyers were not open to digitization. I see a lot of that has changed post-COVID, like COVID did good to lawyers in India. And I see that throughout the world as well, right? So decided to join a company in the legal tech space. So I joined this company called Vakil Search, which is India's biggest legal technology company. That was a great ride. Got to launch a bunch of new services, headed their partnerships team, and things went well.
I'm curious about, I think that everybody comes into marketing in different ways, and usually their roots and kind of upbringing and education influences how they approach marketing and sales and growth. You see a lot of people coming from maybe a theater background or from an English literature background or something, and that influences how they look at content and SEO and whatever else they're doing in tech that wasn't what they studied. So do you feel like there are any surprising ways that studying law and coming up through that background influenced how you look at growth and go to market today?
Actually, now that you brought it up, it's quite interesting, right? I've never thought of it that way. But if I actually see how laws help me, uh, the way I approach marketing is the research first, right? And I think I got a lot of my research skills in law school, right? We had to come up with research papers, didn't work throughout the month, and we had to do it like in a week's time. So we had to really work hard, at least some of us. So I think a lot of research is how I approach marketing and what I did in law school. So I think research first, doing the deep analysis of competition, what they're doing, what's working in market, how they are doing GTM, try talking to a bunch of people within competitor companies if necessary. I think that sets the tone for my understanding of what's happening in the market. And then based on that, we can apply first principles, go to market strategy, whatever we're going to do, and then get started.
It seems to me that I'm not like in any way related to law, and I've never studied law, but I look at a lot of contracts, and the thing that stands out to me is like detail orientation. It seems like you've got to be incredibly like like your critical thinking and your detail orientation have to be dialed in if you want to study and practice law. So I would imagine that kind of impacts that research as well, in the sense that a lot of people might do research and quickly identify, oh, competitor is doing this, therefore we should do this too. Whereas maybe studying law, like you go a second order effect out and say, competitor's doing this, but what's competitor 3 not doing? And how can we like, wedge in and like find that specific detail that we can compete on?
No, I completely agree. But I don't know if law influenced that so much in me. Like, to be very honest, like law school is very different from practicing lawyers, right? You learn most of the stuff after law school, right? Law school it's after law school. But I think the second order and third order effects of thinking that I have gained over a period of time is me working with founders of Todai, like Aravind Sriraman and Abhishek Rajagopal. Like I've interacted every day. I used to bug him with questions. So he comes from a really first principle oriented school of thought. And just talking to him and talking to really smart folks in the industry has just made me think about second order effects better and get to my first principles before approaching a problem to do it.
That makes a ton of sense. Okay, so we'll definitely dive into SEO and the future of SEO. But one other thing that you mentioned, I thought was kind of a contrarian take. And it's interesting because you have this experience like building your own company and working with startups. But you mentioned pricing for startups. And obviously, that's what you guys do, right? Usage-based pricing. You said it doesn't matter. What was the phrase? It doesn't matter, or it's not the most important thing. The only important thing is the survival of your startup, right? I think the way you literally phrased it was there's so much noise around the importance of pricing. Your different point of view is that it's not as important. The only important thing is the survival. So what do you like? Pricing has to matter in some sense, right? Like, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so the way I look at it is like a lot of people today are overemphasizing pricing. Like pricing is definitely important, right? But when you start something, the only thing that is important is survival of your startup. You need to optimize your pricing. Yes, you need to do all of those things. But startups shouldn't be wasting majority of their time in optimizing for pricing, because would you rather you need to be building features that your potential customers could buy. And if people are not going to buy your product, it doesn't matter what pricing you keep. You just need to be smart enough to keep your pricing in such a way that you can optimize certain levers at certain points, right? When pricing really becomes a factor, or when you can really use that as a growth lever, is when you have substantial amount of revenue, right? Like a Series C, Series D startup, when you have product market fit, when you have revenue coming in, then you use pricing as a growth lever to run experiments and to just work things out. Like for instance, today, I don't know if you saw, Sam Altman tweeted that OpenAI is losing a bunch of money with their pricing.
I kind of assume so, yeah.
And everybody's going mad on Twitter, right? It's wild. But the way I see it is, it's one price tweet away for him. Like there was no way that he could expect that the usage was going to be in a particular way, right? If he said it is pure usage-based pricing, then the way you and I would be using OpenAI will be significantly different. The usage factor will be riding in the part of the user's mind.
I guess I probably wouldn't use it as much. Like I would be very conscious of like the little baby queries that I run all the time where I'm just like, oh, what does this mean? Like those little quick ones. Like I'd probably think twice before I used it for that.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think right now he's at a point where all he needs to do is one price tweak. Like people are already really, like, the stickiness to the product is already there, right? So now he just needs to use his pricing levers to change the trajectory. It's a couple of pricing changes away till he figures it out, right? And that need not be the final pricing. You can keep altering, running pricing experiments all the time. Pricing is not like you find the pricing. You need to evolve with pricing, and it will keep changing all the time.
I guess I understand that, especially when you're thinking about kind of micro optimizations and like running pricing experiments. But at a high level, doesn't pricing factor into your go-to-market in kind of a directional way? In that, let's take two comparable, I guess, products like Zapier and Workato that do integration and automation. Obviously, they have product differentiation too, but like their pricing is really what I see differentiates how they actually go to market. In that Workato is priced premium and they're targeting enterprises and they're trying to sell to top-down implementation and use it across teams. And then Zapier is I believe free to start, and then incredibly cheap once you get going. And I think it's even usage-based to an extent. So any individual like myself could just go in and set up a MailChimp and HubSpot integration. So it like kind of dictates how you would kind of build your traction channels, right?
Yep. So I actually think of it in the inverse of what you just said. I don't think pricing should determine the go-to-market strategy. The go-to-market, like the product, like what is your go-to-market strength, right? If your go-to-market strength is enterprise sales, then you need to build a product for enterprise sales and you don't price it accordingly. Like where does your strength lie will determine what product you build. What product you build will determine what pricing you keep, and then you optimize from there.
Mm-hmm. So your mental model in the startup sense, in the early days, like let's say pre or just around product market fit would be A, don't overthink it. And then B, like you're kind of working backwards from maybe like your product strengths and then your channel strategy. And then you can factor in some like directionally right pricing.
That's absolutely right. That's how I think GTM first approach is the approach to take, especially in 2025. You can't wing it. You need to know what your strengths are and then build from there.
Yeah, like what do you focus on first? Are you focusing on finding like a truly scalable customer acquisition channel? Are you focused on, let's say, like product stickiness metrics, like retention or activation, or engagement? Like what things would you look for before optimizing pricing, and kind of what threshold would you seek to pass before you start looking at pricing as another lever to pull?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with you. When you touch pricing, there's a very interesting. The next thing that comes when you talk about pricing is buy versus build.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you want to go into buy versus build?
Let's go. Yeah.
Right. So when it comes to buy versus build, I think the way I see it is there are two constraints. Right? Like strictly speaking, two constraints. One is the know-how, and the other is time. Right? So when you talk about the know-how, engineers can figure it out. Like it is not that complicated. There are enough blogs out there. There are enough articles that will tell you how to build a billing system, right? But people overcomplicate this decision. The way I see it is a reversible decision. It's not a irreversible decision. And like I mentioned, like our first point, like all that matters is the survival of the startup. The startup needs to survive, right? So in order for the startup to survive, you need to build features that people are willing to pay. Right? You can't be spending engineering time building the building tool that is going to take significant amount of time for you to build. Right? So until you hit PMF, I'm of the opinion, don't build anything that is not critical to your business. Buy as much as possible. Focus on what is unique to your product and what you're building. And is that something people will pay for? That's how I would approach the buy versus build.
Mm-hmm. And what does product market fit mean to you? This may be getting pedantic, but I'm just curious, like what that definition means.
Interesting question. So I think you need to find a repeatable motion in different levers that work for you, and you need to be able to, and you should have, see, again, revenue is a number that keeps changing. You need to look at market dynamics. You might have $100 million in revenue, but if market dynamics are changing, it still might not be your product market fit. So I think as long as you find a repeatable motion, you're able to control churn, that the product usability, like our feature being used in the product, that's how I would look at product market fit. Not the best definition, but it is interesting question.
Well, it's kind of one of those things that doesn't have like a scientific definition, like it's not like I don't know, the definition of like a p-value or something like that, where you can just say like, oh, it is this thing. It's like everybody's kind of got their own version of it, and it's kind of like, it when you see it in some cases. So I'm just curious what your version of that is. But let's talk about SEO. That's obviously like what we do, what we talk about a lot on this podcast. And you had the take of all takes, I would say. And I say that because it's optimistic, and I think there's a lot of pessimism in the space right now. So you wrote a little blog post on LinkedIn, and it was about the future of SEO. And the key quote that I wanted to frame this with is, you said, removing all biases, I think that 2025 through 2027 might be the best time for startups and companies.
Yeah.
We'll go into the details here, but why?
So I think the way Google and the algorithm is changing is really good content is going to stand out, right? But I think really good content is going to stand out. Like things like backlinks, I don't think are going to matter anymore. Things like interlinking, things like on-page SEO, all of the things that writers don't like, I feel will not matter in a big way. Or it's been, like on-page SEO today is not that hard. Like there are so many CMS platforms out there that simplifies it to the easiest way for you to have a really on-page score, right? So I think what really matter will be really good content. And people think writing really good content is easy. I don't think it is, right? I think writing really good content is extremely hard. So I think for any startup, for any writer, I think this is definitely the best phase. And I think this is going to kill a lot of half-baked SEO agencies that think they know what they're doing, but they actually don't know what they're doing. So I think really good SEO agencies will stand out in this period.
I hope you're right. And I think you're right. So that's what we're, queuing ourselves up for. I have to dive into the specifics here though. On-page SEO, I totally agree. And I even think to some extent, like if you're just getting the table stakes in order, so sort of matching the search intent, and figuring out what needs to be on page to sort of answer the basic queries. You've got ClearScope, you've got Surfer, you've got Market Muse, you've got all these tools that can help you reverse engineer what keywords need to be present, which is table stakes, right? Like if anybody can do that, like then it's like, what's the emergent value on top of that? And then the backlinks is interesting to me, because I guess my logic is you need some signal that's hard to fake or at least approximates, I guess, credibility. And I think that if we reverse engineer what Google's original patent was trying to do, it was to say the number and the quality of backlinks is approximating the trust in the source, right? In the same sense that, like, I believe their analogy was research papers, academic papers, and the number of citations and the power of those citations would say, like, all right, this is an important piece of academic literature. The same sense would have been true maybe in the paradigm in SEO. So I guess what would replace backlinks as that quality signal? Or like, why do you think that backlinks may not matter as much in the future?
I think 95% of the backlinks today are paid, right? Everybody is going for paid backlinks, and everybody in the SEO industry knows that, right? So I think what is going to stand out, and what Google probably means by that, like, I think digital PR is going to stand out in a big way, right? So as long as these I understand domain authority is a key metric. We can get high quality backlinks, but Google will find a way, or already has found a way, that this page sells backlinks, and therefore it's not of much value. So I don't think paid backlinks will be the way to go in the future. Although, like, when you're a startup, the things you optimize for are different, and you might have to do certain things to get your domain authority up, because you feel if you get your domain authority up, the chances of you ranking increase and or are faster for you to rank. So I'm not saying one should not be doing backlinking. I don't think that is the core I think the core is on quality content that you write, and it's not on backlinks. I think digital PR is going to boom in a big way.
And by digital PR, what do you mean by that?
By digital PR, so digital PR is this. You probably know digital PR better than I do, but digital PR is basically the concept where you're putting out content in an informative format. You're doing a bunch of research and you're sharing content. It can be in a huge article, and you share it with various newsrooms, news articles. You put it out, and they pick up the research piece that you've done, and they give you a backlink for it. So this backlink is based on an article they are working on. It is not your article. It's not plugging in something that you've done. It is just taking the research that stands out in your article that's helpful for the article the news company is working for, and plugging it in. That way it's a credible source that you're getting it from, and also these are not bought backlinks. So it's the quality, I believe, will be much higher.
Yeah. I think it relates. I mean, there's some component of it that like technically speaking is a backlink in the sense that like somebody's mentioning you and potentially hyperlinking to you. But I think the qualitative difference is in the paradigm that you're talking about with backlinking that may not be as valuable in the future is when you look at a MarTech blog or a SaaS blog and you just see like, all right, this paragraph, it's talking about usage-based pricing, and there's a hyperlink on the anchor text to usage-based pricing, and it goes to Tokai, and you're like, all right, like I can tell that, there's a partnership going on here, like, this is a paid placement or something like that. So that's a backlink, like, and then another backlink, which is just a hyperlink to another site, could be an article where it doesn't just link on anchor text to usage-based pricing, but it says, according to research by Tokai, 77% of executives say X, Y, and Z, and therefore this is the narrative that we're going to frame the article with. And I think it's because it's a uniquely value additive asset that makes it stand out. And I guess like the question mark would be, can search engines figure out the difference between those? And I guess like your hypothesis, I'm assuming here, is that yes, if not now, they will be able to in the future be able to distinguish among those different tactics.
That's absolutely right. I think they probably already have, or it will happen very soon in the future.
I always think like one of my mental models is sort of like hard to fake, or like what is scarce is valuable, and what is abundant is maybe dilutive, in the sense of like demand and supply, right? So if it's very easy for a company to buy a backlink for a couple $100 or to write a guest post, then everybody else can do it, and therefore the incremental value of each of those is dilutive, versus like building an original research asset takes time and effort, and sometimes it doesn't go well, but sometimes it does, and it's incredibly unique when it does. And I feel like if you can index on those more scarce assets, that's probably going to be incrementally valuable in the future.
No, that's a really nice way to put it, and I think so. I think the future is going to be quite interesting, and I don't think paid backlinking is going to play a factor at all, especially with LLMs taking over. LLMs being a huge part of everything today.
Yeah, so that was another take of yours too, and let's just walk through these actually. So you had 3 theses in this article. I'll run down them and we can talk about each of them. So first was artificial intelligence is taking prominence, and you said not in terms of writing, but in terms of search results. So we'll dig into that for sure. Second point was high quality content. No way around this. There's no point just writing a lot of content. AI generated content makes little to no sense. The only thing that would matter is, quote, does this content help the user approach? And then the last one, very interesting, is that images and graphics. So you said visual search is gaining momentum as users can now find information by simply uploading images or screenshots to Google. So let's cover those one by one, and then we can kind of go into tactical advice. But the first one, AI taking prominence.
I think the best place to start with SEO in 2025 is with the HubSpot controversy.
Let's go.
Right? No, so I think entire LinkedIn blew up, like at least all over my feed. I'm sure pretty much yours as well, where a huge part of the people were pointing out, I think Ryan Law had put this out and was pointing out that HubSpot's traffic is down, HubSpot's traffic is down, oh God, right? And then there was the other set which was the logical sense. So the way I look at it is, has hubs, yes, traffic is down, but their conversions are up. Traffic is down, but their revenue is up. Traffic is down, the share price is up, right? So traffic, the way I look at it is, I think 2025, is traffic really a reliable metric that we should be tracking? I think that is the major problem. So everything that I've written, it starts from here, right? And the way I look at it is, I would break down the SEO as pre-AI and post-AI, right? When you take pre-AI, like if you look at Gartner's research, Gartner put out a paper sometime ago, research sometime ago, saying that in 2026, saying that traditional search will reduce by 25%, right? And LLMs and AI is going to take over. And in 2028, they're predicting 50% of organic search will be down. This is Gartner's research, by the way, right? So I think KPI metrics are significantly changing. Sure. So I think the traditional marketing, like how people approached, was more pages, more visibility, more clicks, more leads. Like this is how it was, right? But I think in 2025, the entire industry, Google is changing in a significant way. Like with all these changes, like what are the changes that are happening? Like before you had 3 ads, probably it's now 4 ads. People now use mobile more than desktop search. There are answer boxes on Google. There are these rich snippets that come about. There are video results that come. Google is optimizing for forums, right? So the entire search paradigm has changed, right? When the entire search paradigm has changed, the CTR expectations of marketing is not changing. Ideally, the CTR expectation should change, right? So I think with all of this, can be filled in. Like organic social is going to play a good role in 2025 forward, right? But the way I see it is, traffic is going to go down. But the metric that marketing should be looking for and marketing should be obsessing over is the revenue, right? If your revenue is not down your traffic is down, your revenue is not down, you're in the right path. If your revenue is down and your traffic is down, then there's something that you need to look deeper and figure out what you need to do, right? And I feel SEO consultants need to start viewing things from a digital consultant point of view and not just SEO, right? So, and obviously building a brand is going to play a huge role. I think brand is going to be a key differentiator in SEO in the coming years and months.
This is such a good talking point. I mean, the HubSpot case is very emblematic of I think what's happening, maybe not industry wide or SEO wide, but particularly with content heavy websites that were designed from an SEO first perspective. So your typical like analyze competitors and like look at content gaps and find the top traffic keywords. And, you know, if it's related to your business, that's like a second priority or a second layer of prioritization. The first is like, does it have a ton of traffic? And I think that way, my hypothesis here, by the way, so I worked at HubSpot and so did my 2 co-founders. And we have like a very interesting viewpoint here because when we started our agency, we deliberately and explicitly said in our messaging and in our sales calls, don't copy HubSpot's playbook. Like we have all these receipts from like, you know, us saying this in 2020 and 2021 and last year and all the way up until this point. And my hypothesis is that strategy, not to say HubSpot strategy, because they crushed, right? Like they did the best possible B2B SEO playbook for the last couple decades. And they did index on a lot of like BOFU content and product led stuff too. They just kind of got over their skis and went pretty broad as well with pretty generic content. But I think that a lot of companies that had traffic gains from those types of queries and that type of SEO strategy, I don't think it was ever effective. And I think what's happening now is the tide is getting washed out. And that old Warren Buffett quote, it's like, you know, you see who's naked. It's like you see actually that, to your point, traffic is down and revenue is up. Well, that should say something. That's pretty interesting, right? Like the fact that like you can lose 20, 50% of your traffic and see little to no decline in your leads and revenue. what does that say about the traffic that you lost? And the traffic that you lost is either getting taken up by AI overviews or previous to that, feature snippets. But it was all informational, and not just informational, but very, very top of funnel, like definitional stuff that, probably like a college student is searching like what is marketing, and they need a definition for what is marketing so they can get their term paper in, and it's due tomorrow morning. They're cramming. It's like the night before, and it's like how many CMOs were searching that, and then getting an ebook that indicated their intent was to eventually buy a CRM. I don't think that was ever the case, and I think now the analytics, and because the search engines and AI kind of discovery tools, they're changing. Now we're seeing that in the data, and now we're forced to reconcile with that and have the conversation about what is SEO for in the first place.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Right. So I think pre AI and everything, like the only metric was traffic to the website. So everybody just want to go with broad topics. If you're able to rank 1, 2, 3 on a really broad traffic that brings 10,000 visitors, you see a significant jump to your website. And that was the metric that was being reported. So the way people optimize for was website traffic. Like a marketer wants to impress his boss, right? So he needs to optimize for the metric his boss wants. And his boss wants traffic to the website. And he brought traffic to the website. So I think the way it should be going forward is marketing should be more obsessed on revenue.
I think that's very true. Yeah. And but like, so what does that, I guess, mean from like an SEO and content strategy standpoint? Like how does that, the metric is like, it's like that old quote about like what gets measured gets managed, right? So like if traffic is no longer the proximate and distal metric that you're goaled on, and if it's something more approximating revenue, maybe it's not revenue, maybe it's something like qualified pipeline or product signups that eventually turn into revenue. How does that incentive structure come back and change like your inputs in the strategy? Like what needs to change in your opinion moving forward?
So, I mean, I agree to all of the KPIs that you mentioned, right? So what would be like qualified leads, pipeline, revenue? I think these are the core metrics that sales and marketing should be obsessed over. Like in a lot of companies, I see this approach. Like say marketing optimizing just for leads. They don't care about the quality of leads, and sales optimize only for sales is only obsessed about conversion, which is the right way to go. So I feel you need to find an intersection between marketing and sales, and you need to they need to be their partner. Like you can't view them as an enemy, right? So to your question, I think the way content should be viewed, right, in 2025, like how do you write good content? I think the first question I would ask is what is the approach? Let's talk about the approach that people are doing today, right? So the approach that people are taking is you want to rank for a particular term. You analyze the SERP, and you see all of the articles, you read all the articles, and you want to write an article that's better than all of them. So essentially, back in the day, I think like about 6-7 years ago, it was called the skyscraper method.
Yeah, or 10x content or something.
Yeah. Exactly, right? So people are still following that approach, and that's what they do. So you and then you build links on it, you do all of that, right? But I think the way you need to approach it today in 2025 and going forward is the first question that you need to ask is, are you really proud of the content that you're writing or that you've written, right? Would you share that content on a Slack group or internally? Would you want to push that content and run ads with the content on organic social, right? Would you want to is that content reflective of what your brand stands for? Does it push your brand in any way, right? If the answer is yes to all of this, right, and most importantly, is this article the article that you wished that existed when you were searching for a particular term or whatever you were searching for? I think this is the question that you need to ask about for each article that you write. If the answer is yes to all of this, then you've written a great piece of article, right? I don't think you should be optimizing for SEO per se and like try to bring in keywords and all of that. I think you just need to write a phenomenal piece of article. You need to and SEO will happen. SEO will happen, right? I think this content team should look at this as an experiment, do traditionally what they are doing, and probably take a couple of articles and run this experiment where they write significantly good pieces of content, and you'll have results. I would argue that it makes more sense like to have fewer number of visitors on a really good article as opposed to getting like 1,000 visitors or 50 or like or 2,000 visitors on an article that's not great. Like, what does it reflect of your brand?
I completely agree with that. And it's funny in some sense because I actually think there was a time where this was, if not everybody's strategy, it was more popular in let's say 2015. And maybe that was just my view because that was when I worked at CXL.
Mm-hmm.
And CXL at the time was a powerhouse in blogging and content. And they were like the evangelists of conversion rate optimization and experimentation. And I still to this day get clients who followed my writing from 2015 and 2016. And I still look back on those articles and I wonder, I'm like, how did that, I mean, this is good. Like, I'm so proud of what I wrote, back then, because I would pour my heart into it. I would do so much research. I would get experience in the thing that I was writing about. So like I knew deeply and I knew the limitations of like this testing methodology versus the other one. But that was our approach in 2015. And I don't know what changed. Maybe it's like the proliferation of tools, giving you kind of like those metrics, like the clear scopes and whatnot that kind of, push you to the median. And maybe sometimes part of me thinks platforms too, in that like in those days, what you could do is you could get distribution on social platforms. A lot of people would share links on Facebook still, like people used Facebook and there was inbound.org and growth hackers and people just shared links and enjoyed reading great content.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks that like the tragedy of the commons in SEO is because that went away. So the only way to get distribution was to basically formulate your content to specifically match SEO as a distribution channel, because there was not as many ways or obvious ways to get eyes on wonderful content. But it's just funny. It's like, I feel like back in the day that was how a lot of people approach things. And then there was this dark ages period where, that became less popular.
No, that's a very interesting point that you brought out, right? So there's this term in SEO, you probably know it better than I do as well, called the zero line marketing world.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think what companies need to start doing companies need to start taking advantage of platform agnostic, need to go platform agnostic. What I mean by that is on LinkedIn, you need to start writing articles. Like all of the platforms, all of the social media platforms, if you look at, don't like sending the user out of their platform. What does that mean? If you're writing 2 articles on LinkedIn and one article has a link that goes to your blog post and the other does not have a link, it retains the user on LinkedIn. The article that retains the user on LinkedIn will perform better. Right? So I think I think this is how it is going to be. We are in a zero click marketing world. Platforms want attention of the user. I think it's good for the user as well. Why do you need to send the user to a different platform?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at on Google, like first now you have like first it was snippets. Now you have your LLM Gemini giving out answers, right? All of the platform, Instagram for instance, does not want links on posts or pictures. None of the platforms want links. So I think it is a good thing for the user. It is just that SEOs and content people need to take advantage of platform specific and write platform specific content. It is hard in a way where you need to show your best content right through the gate. You need to capture the person's attention immediately. You can't make them read 5 minutes and then get like you need to put out your core message right up front.
I guess there's some component here too that requires a little bit of courage or surrender. And that sounds strange to talk about in content, but what I mean is I'm greedy and I kind of want that email and I kind of want that analytics that I can track on my website.
Yeah.
And if I give that up, I may benefit from providing more of a platform conducive message that travels further. But I don't want to give that up. Like I want that traffic on my website and I want that user on my email list. So I feel like there's some tension there,
No, definitely. I think it'll all boil down to what kind of a CMO or what kind of leader that you have, right? Like, I think the best thing that marketers can do is keep your leader, keep the CMOs informed of the change in trajectories in the marketing world. Like today, nobody knows what's going to happen. Like whatever we're talking about is based on a bunch of learnings and what we think is going to happen. Like we can be absolutely wrong of what's going to happen, right? So these are just hypotheses that we have, and people need to realign with market expectations, right? What are the expectations that are set need to be thought of based on what's happening in the market, get few benchmarks, and then go ahead, reorient the marketing leader with what's happening in the market, tell him or her how things are changing, and you need to run a bunch of experiments. I think right now experiments is the only way to go forward.
Do you feel like your user behavior personally has changed in how you interact with information? In that, I guess I'm biasing the question here, but LLMs seem to provoke more specific queries. In the sense that, like, maybe in the past you would search for something like welcome email in Google,
yep.
And in the sense that you wanted to figure out like how to write a welcome email, maybe you would write how to write a welcome email. But in ChatGPT, what I do is I'll say, I am a co-founder at an organic growth agency, and we get X amount of traffic, and most of our content is on this topic line. And we convert them to an email list. And here's the email list, like the theme of our email list, right? We send once a week newsletter. It's a deep, long form essay about like what we're learning in the field. How would I write a welcome email that would fit into our strategy? And it's going to be a kind of a long prompt that's very specific, right? Do you think that your behavior and how you're interfacing with information has also changed, and that may be predictive of what may change for how users generally interface with chat or search?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that has had a huge impact on me is like when I'm searching for something informational, Gemini or Google gives me the answer through Gemini, right on top. So I don't even scroll down further to see what the links are, right? So if it's informational, I find that to be really helpful, really useful, and I haven't clicked the link for anything informational in quite a while now. But like you said, like if it is specific to something, like you said, an email that I need to write, like I don't want to be so direct. I want to be a little bit diplomatic. I want to take ChatGPT's help. Yeah, you can use ChatGPT and use a framework and then make changes to that and go ahead. But
no, I think it could be interesting, and it depends on how like these LLMs end up surfacing content documents. But I think in the past, with like the preponderance on backlinks and domain authority and all of these things that sort of built a compound advantage, like the Matthew effect, it's kind of like to whoever has, more is given, right? So you would search NPS and you would get like the same 10 websites. My theory is that there's a lot of great content that's been buried because it's too specific and it's not on a website that everybody knows about, like a Forbes or something. And maybe if these LLMs can get better and better at understanding the textual nature as opposed to like those other proximate signals like backlinks, like maybe I can get surfaced like more interesting, rich, underrated content. And maybe, I mean, this is my optimistic take, like hopefully we can get more exposure on some of that too. Because I think like there's a lot of people who have not been playing the SEO game who maybe kept a personal blog, right? Like you think of like an entrepreneur who wrote, well, nowadays on Substack, but maybe back in the day on a WordPress blog, and just didn't give a fuck about SEO, and how much insight is buried in that like, give me that, when I'm searching something very specific, give me those documents.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, but I think that's a very, very far time away. I think a new term that come about in the recent past, I don't know if you saw it. It is generative search optimization, right? Like people are now trying to optimize for LLMs as opposed to just.
I'm a little skeptical. I don't know about you. What do you think about that?
I'm skeptical as well. I think a great article will end up featuring on the snippet or on the LLM. But so I think it's something like this, right? If you have credible citations in your article, it said for like based on it. So basically, this research paper analyzed a bunch of citations from analyzed a bunch of queries from Google, and they reverse engineered it, right? So it said 40% of the search results have citations.
Mm-hmm.
So increase the number of citations that you write in each article, right? So it said add quotes to your article, like quotes by certain famous people, certain people known in your industry. Add these quotes. By adding these quotes, like 40% of the search results that end up featuring on the LLM has quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They said add statistics. Add statistics to an article that you write. Like good writing practice will automatically have all of this, but this is just a research paper, right? If you by adding statistics, I think about 15 to 30% of the articles had statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the other thing was just simplify the language and make it as simple as possible for the end user. Right. By doing this, the chances of you featuring in an LLM is a lot higher.
So these all feel like, I don't want to say best practices, like, because common practices are different, but these all feel very rational to me. And even in the sense that you were talking about, you alluded to this, but instead of using keywords, like really focus on your ICP or persona and target buyer and like what problems they're facing and answer it in the best possible way. Pull subject matter expert quotes in, cite authoritative studies and other research, and write in simple language that's easily understandable. And all of this parlays into generative optimization. Like all of that feels like it should have been done in the past paradigm too. It doesn't feel like anything crazy new to me.
I completely agree, but in the past you could gamify SEO.
Yes.
Like there were certain ways like you can get your result up, right? It might not be the best article, but it'll still be up there. So again, LLMs are a little tricky because there are a bunch of LLMs. We have DeepSeek now. So how each LLM functions and what are their criteria and parameters to feature snippets or to feature content from certain articles is unknown today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these are like you said, these are best practices of content, and you should have done it anyway in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that research papers are finding that you need to write good content all once again.
Yeah. And solve for the user. I don't know why we all kind of lost that amidst this like gamification.
First principles.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first principles aside, you mentioned also images and graphics. And I'll add too that you added kind of like third-party platforms outside of Google. So Reddit, LinkedIn Pulse, YouTube is huge, Quora right now. Let's just like bucket this entirely as sort of like alternative SEO, right? So like not just blog posts and written content. And then specifically, like you said, visual search is gaining momentum. So users can find info by uploading images, screenshots to Google. Let's add to that the YouTube and video SEO. I'm seeing more of that play into traditional SERPs, but also be cited in LLMs, which is very interesting. So how are you thinking about this like alt SEO, like multimedia bucket?
So Reddit, for instance, like in the last 1 year, you should have seen, has had great increase in volume of searches. Like Google wants to optimize for the end user. So when you search for a query, like 1 out of 3 queries, you'll see a Reddit link in the top 5 searches. Right. The reason Google is doing that is Google wants what is best for the user who's searching. So a user wants opinions. A user does not want just articles from various players. So that's why Reddit is up there. So companies need to start taking advantage of platform. Quora, I think is struggling a little bit, but I think Reddit is right up there. Where companies need to start taking advantage of all of these platforms and start writing, like you can't be salesy on Reddit, right? Mm-hmm. You'll get kicked out of Reddit if you're salesy. You need to add value. First principles, add value to the end user. Find threads, don't force fit, don't fake a question with another user and write content. Like it doesn't work, right? You need to find threads that are there, ask the right questions and give content. Don't push your content. And if it makes sense, add a blog link or add your website link. Don't force fit it, and people will find a way to your website. Same thing with video. Like when you see the SERP today, your search results have videos today. Google is pushing for YouTube, and I think YouTube SEO is underutilized by 90% of the companies out there.
Especially B2B, right?
Yeah. I come from B2B, so all I thought was B2B, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's completely underutilized. And the effort that it takes to put out a video is high, so people shy away from going to YouTube. But I think video is going to play a huge part, and by video, it is YouTube, right? So you need to look at it in a multi-model approach and not just SEO as organic, like only a return format. It needs to be video, it needs to be forums. Like you can even think of starting your own forum. Like there are companies out there that helps you index the forum that you create, right? I forget the name. I think I mentioned it in the article that I wrote. So I think you need to look at SEO as digital and not just Google.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to come up with some sort of a mental model here, but like the sort of barrier to entry is an interesting heuristic in that it's a higher barrier to entry to create content on YouTube, but I think the bar for quality is lower because the competition hasn't necessarily flooded that market yet.
Yeah.
In the same way that like I think LinkedIn is kind of it's priced in now. I don't think it's underpriced anymore. I think there's still a massive amount of opportunity if you can do it well. But let's track back like 4 or 5 years ago. If you were writing really kind of basic stuff there, you could do really well because nobody else was really writing anything. So I think like there was just like a low bar for content quality. Whereas like if we track back to our SEO content, what most people were putting out is now table stakes because it's democratized entirely. If you just have a Surfer or ClearScope account and you have a ChatGPT account and like a very basic way to put together a brief, you can hit the 5 out of 10, you can hit the median level, and so can literally anybody else. So that I think like the bar is much higher now to stand out. Which it's still a propitious channel because it's such a huge distribution lever, right? Like there's just so many users of search. But there's a lot of users on YouTube as well. I just think if you look at the B2B space, for most markets, probably pricing, right? Like I would imagine there's not a ton of amazing content on pricing. There's very little on SEO. Honestly, we should probably be on YouTube. I think Ahrefs is the only player who's doing anything interesting there. If you can just go like slightly marginally higher in terms of your effort, it's more of a green space, right?
Yeah, and it's a place where people can search for content. Like if you're just going to host this video on your website, you might have a bunch of people coming to your website, but you're not putting on a platform that you need to take leverage of platforms that already exist, right? Like today, the way the algorithm works of each platform is completely changing. Like before, it depended on a bunch of factors, but today you have the infinite scroll. Like on Instagram, I don't know if you do. Like I definitely do this. I'm guilty of it. I hate myself for it. Just keep scrolling on YouTube and Instagram Shorts, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. So basically the algorithm works in such a way that the content that you like and you're spending time on, you get more of that content. So Google the videos that you put out on SEO will get pushed to the right people. You just need to ensure that it is attractive. You're able to deliver value in a really short period of time if you're doing shorts, right? And you're going to get traction.
This is awesome. You and I are both. We got to go to a meeting in a couple of minutes. So I'm conscious of both of our time. I think we could go on for days. Not just. I mean, SEO is one pool that we've covered a lot in this one, but there's a million things that I didn't ask you about that I'll have to get you on for part 2. I wanted to talk about your podcast and what you've learned and all kinds of startup lessons. But yeah, let's cap it off. So you're optimistic. I love that general framing. Let's recap what you're optimistic about. It seems like this raising the bar of quality is something that it seems like is a common through line between what you've said, and then that multimodal approach is something that I've also kind of latched onto. Give me the summary for SEO in 2025 and beyond, and why you're excited about it.
So I think to sum it up, I think what Google is doing with all the algorithm updates, we're going to a great place, right? It is user first. It is whatever adds value for the user is going to be pushed up. Like SEO need to follow a multi-model approach. Can't just focus on Google as one growth lever. Organic social we need to fill up gaps where you're losing out content. We need to look at content from a different sense where quality of content is going to be the be all and end all. It can't be subpar content. Like you said, the bar of content is gone up. By gone up, everybody has access to it. Like it's the same with software today. Like before, people used to say, if you need to be ashamed of the first MVP you put out some phrase like that, right? Like Kyle Poyar in one of the talks, like he was saying, like the bar is so high today, like to make a simple software is very easy. It's not complicated anymore. So when you put out a software, it needs to be the best version of your software. It needs to really stand out in order for you to get traction. So I believe that's the same for SEO, same for organic. SEO should not be viewed as just putting out a bunch of content. Content velocity is one thing, but quality content will triumph it over a period of time. Backlinks, I think, are going to win. And brand is going to play a huge factor.
I love it. It all reminds me of that, like, kind of like cheeky quote where it's like, we chose to do this not because it was easy, but because we thought it would be easy. And I feel like, it's not going to be as easy anymore, but I think that's a wonderful thing for the user and for intelligent and hardworking growth marketers and SEOs. And I, like you, am really excited for this new paradigm. So thank you so much. Where can people find you online?
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It was great talking to you. Where can people find me online on LinkedIn? Like, I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so I think LinkedIn would be the best place to go.
All right. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.